Welcome to Connection is the Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Eaden Shantay. Today I welcome Dharma teacher and author John Bruna. John's family life growing up was challenging and included loss, violence, and addiction. But eventually he found sobriety and Buddhism. He had many careers, from dishwasher and mechanic to high school teacher and addiction counselor. In 2005, John met the Dalai Lama and was ordained as a Buddhist monk. He now directs the Way of Compassion Dharma Center in Carbondale, Colorado, is co-founder of the Tri-Wisdom Institute, and author of the book, The Wisdom of a Meaningful Life. It was a blessing to share time with John, a person who turned great adversity into lessons learned and a life so well lived. Welcome, John.
Hey, good to be with you, Eden. A joy, as always, to see you.
I've already given our audience a preview of you in the intro, so I'd like to dive right into the show and ask you about a couple of crossroads moments in your life, early life, that impacted the trajectory of your life and brought you to the path you're on now. So please take it away, my friend.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, one of the most sort of early pivotal things, my mom raised 9 of us, by the way, and my dad died when I was very young. I was about 6 years old, so I'm 8 out of 9, so big family, mom raising 9 kids, and, you know, one of those early sort of pivot points or significant points would probably be a better way of putting it, is I had a speech impediment when I was young. So I couldn't speak like the other kids. A lot of kids could not understand me. And my mom could. But it was already sort of an insecurity, you know, that showed up. I remember first day of kindergarten. That was really a terrifying event, you know, because they can't enunciate, and, you know, kids kind of, you know, can't really understand me and already feel different. And, you know, it was just a real traumatic thing to go to school. I literally pooped my pants that day. And, you know, I mean, embarrassment, confusion. And, you know, I think that was going to be this tone in my early childhood, was that, you know, I'm not like the other kids, and, you know, there's some anxiety. And I think that would lay a foundation for what would eventually lead to me seeking, you know, ways to feel okay about who I am that were pretty unhealthy. But just that early on, first day of school, being different than scared, not a stellar start to my academic career. And so fortunately, though, I did get some speech therapy, and by second grade, yeah, people could get me a little bit. On the fun side, the way I said fire truck sounded a lot like just the F word. I put those two together and I get all excited. Yeah, so, you know, there were some amusing moments for my family. And so, you know, that journey of being young, of not enunciating, you know, big family, and then my dad died when I was 6, and mom raised 9 of us. We all had to figure out how to live. We had to kind of separate till my mom could get a place for us to be. And then this journey began of, you know, my mom did get a house. We did get together. But by that time, so my older siblings had found heroin addiction. And, you know, by the time I was 10 years old, you know, I knew how to answer the door when the police came. I could ask, do you have a search warrant? No, you can't come in. You know, just these sort of survival techniques. And by 10 years old, for me to be okay around, you know, the environment I was living in, I was boosting liquor from a liquor store, and, you know, and finding a way to anesthetize myself. And so even in this journey of youth, it was one of feeling, you know, not as good as, different from, anesthetizing myself. And that would lead, you know, even to events where, you know, my house was shot into with a drive-by violence, you know, and they're trying to kill one of my older brothers, and I'm middle school, and diving under the couch, glass being shattered, bullet holes all over the walls, and so this was the atmosphere in which I just learned not to trust anyone and learned how to defend myself and be okay, and sought solace in drugs and addiction. My older brothers were heroin addicts and went in and out of prison, and I was younger, but I was already learning that these things can help me find a way to anesthetize myself to the chaos that I was around. But on the other side of that, my mom was amazing, and my mom never gave up on us, man. She took us to church. She, she was, she's the reason I think we all turned out. All my brothers wound up finding recovery. All my brothers wound up changing their lives. 5 of us. And, she was just an incredible, loving, amazing Catholic woman who never gave up, took us to church, and, loved us. And I think if there's any one sort of lesson I have in terms of parenting, and what probably saved all of us, is that if your kids know you love them, no matter what, you're doing a good job. And I think we all knew that with my mom. And so, everybody actually did eventually turn out okay. There's a lot of chaos and a lot of decades there, but everybody died with quite a bit of recovery. And one of my best moments is when my mom did pass. She was in her 80s. We were all with her, and we were all able to tell her, "Mom, it's okay to go. We're okay. You don't have to worry about us." And that's what moms, to have that freedom to let them know we're all good. And I was actually a Buddhist monk at that time, and I got to lead the rosary for the family with her because she was Catholic, and I thought my mom is either so thrilled that her children are here doing the rosary with her, or she wants to slap us because we need the directions, like we should know this. I wasn't sure which way it was going. But those are some of the early sort of things in my life. Was a loving mom, an adventurous childhood, around a lot of insecurity, chaos, and violence, and really the refuge of alcohol in my youth to try to find a way to be okay.
Did you also explore heroin, or was it just alcohol?
Yeah, no, I did pretty much every drug out there. However, heroin was not one. With 4 older brothers and the chaos that ensued, the one time I stuck a needle in my arm, I instantly knew I could never do this again. I got it. It was such a potent transformation and so instantaneous. Like my mind, I was actually living at a KOA out of Grand Junction, and it hit me so directly that I knew why my brothers did what they did. I knew I could never do this again, or I'm never coming back. So my drugs of choice, was I did all kinds of downers and pills and weed and psychedelics and speed and crank and crystal meth and all this range, but I was not gonna stick a needle in my arm again like that, because it just instantaneously, I knew I'm never coming back. I get it.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 19 years old then. Yeah, about to become a dad. My partner was pregnant. We had run out of gas and money in Grand Junction, Colorado. We had a whole clan of us, 13, her family, and we ran out of gas money. Our first place of residence was the horse stalls at the fairgrounds in Grand Junction. Those people there let us stay, and they had the jockeys had like bathrooms and stuff, and we hawked enough money, things to get some money to stay at the KOA. And then later, a homeless camp underneath the I-70 bridge right out of Palisade. Lived there for a little bit. 19
Wow.
years old, about to become a dad. My daughter was born almost on my 20th birthday. It just went past midnight. Yeah.
And so what led to recovery and that path?
Yeah, so recovery, was still a time coming. One of the things that I mention often is I've never met a person, I don't think, that wants to be a good person. Everyone I met wants to be a good person. I've never met a person who doesn't. And I've met a lot of people like me who just didn't know how, because we're trying to survive, we're trying to be okay. We come from adverse environments. And, I wanted to be a good person. And there was an opportunity here because since I didn't have resources, I wasn't out getting loaded. I was taking care of the kids. I'm about to become a dad. I wanted to be like normal people. I remember watching, looking out the window thinking, watching a family like pack up and go have a picnic. And I wondered, how do people do that, right? How do normal people live, And I got a little bit of just taking care of things, a little job, a little one-room place for all of us. And my daughter was born. And since I hadn't had a dad, I really wanted to be a good dad. And so the journey there was, just making sure we had enough to get by and thinking I might make it. However, all that would change. I actually wound up in Ogden, Utah, of all places. We were packing up, we were moving on. My truck broke down again. And so anyway, wound up in Utah and wound up with a very good job and got a 3-bedroom apartment and everything I could imagine, right? Each kid had a room. I'm a new dad, got a good job. And this is when addicts, ruin their lives. I became the worst human being I'd been in my life. And it came to a point where I had to hand the phone to my partner so she could call her grandparents to rescue the kids and her from me. And so she had to... she called her parents to come get her and the kids, and that was a really, when we talk about turning points in life, or imprints, when I'm going to lose my daughter, when I've done the shameful things I've done, when they're coming to get the kids, I didn't want to face them, so I went out with the guys from work, get loaded as usual, and got in a violent altercation where there's 2 times in my life I almost killed another human being. This was one of them. Literally was choking someone to death until they were blue. And the only thing that saved them was people pulled me off, at the last minute. And I had this moment of clarity that I almost killed another human being. What is wrong with me? I'm losing my family. This is too much. And I went home that night, and my shirt's ripped open. I've been in a fight. I'm still dragging the remains of a 6-pack dangling in my hands. And I went to go to my empty apartment. And I opened the door, and it wasn't empty. There was the grandmother of my daughter holding my daughter and looking right at me. And here I am. Like, here's the reason you need to leave, shirts ripped open, drunk, and I'll never forget the shame, of seeing her holding my daughter, and there's just nowhere to hide, and they had to wait around all night for me because their car needed a jump start, and so they were waiting till I got home to where we could jump start their car and they could leave and take the kids. And And I would love to tell you that's when I got clean, but it wasn't, it was, but it was a pivotal point. It was embedded. And I've lost my daughter due to my using. And a year and a half later, basically, I would wind up finding my recovery. It was, I would hurt another human being, emotionally, probably the first human being I actually think I really loved, and I'd hurt her, and I went out to get loaded that night, and no matter what I did, it did not take away the pain. Like, it did not, it didn't work. And what was fortunate for me by then, I was back in California where I was born and raised, and two of my brothers had gotten clean. And so I knew there was a way. Right? So in the 12 steps, the second step is, came to believe, you could be restored to sanity. And I knew that because I saw my brothers. And so it's interesting. I took that second step way before, that first one. And so with that pain that was so deep, I had this moment of realization when I saw her and I saw the pain, and it was that all of this shame was because I did shameful things. All of this way I feel about myself. And yet at one point it was because of my childhood, but now it's me. And I realized that my biggest affliction was my substances, and I hurt people, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So on August 21st, 1984, I went to a meeting, and I've been clean ever since. That was the day that, there was enough pain. Substances didn't work anymore. And this gradual process of learning how to live began. And, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't fun, and I didn't sign me up. It was uncomfortable and awkward, and I was disassociated from my emotions and uncomfortable in those meetings. But I just knew that if I wanted to live at all, I could not, cannot use these things. And gradually these people taught me how to live, and, a whole different part of my journey would take place.
John, that's an absolute incredible story of your early life, and I want to offer my gratitude for you sharing the depth of that. It brought tears to my eyes to hear what you went through on this karmic journey, so that you could be where you are right now. When you were just sharing about the discomfort of being in recovery during those first weeks and months, what flashed to me is you in kindergarten when you started out, in terms of how difficult that was. And here you are again in this fish out of water kind of experience.
Absolutely. Good correlation there. My first year of recovery, was very just awkward, uncomfortable, disassociated from, what I think humans would feel like. I didn't have a lot of conversation. It's like, there's a TV show called Dexter with like a sociopath, and that I kind of relate to because he had this sort of narrative in his head that he had to self-talk about, what a normal person would do here and what they might say and whether they would show empathy or something. And I felt like I had that narrative going on for like my first year. Like, okay, a normal person would do this and a normal person would do that. And I remember getting some deep emotional pain happen. And I was excited. I was so delighted that I was like feeling it. It was like, I'm human. I can do this. Like, this is awesome. I'm starting to feel and act like humans do. And it was a joy. And, my early recovery, and I think one of the most transformative things in my life, and something that every talk I ever give around this, is they taught me the most important question of my life. I think the question that I've asked most of my life, and I think most humans do, is what can I do to feel okay? Right? I mean, it's a pretty normal question. It's, what can I do to feel good? What do I want for breakfast? What do I want to do today? But they taught me to ask, how can I be helpful? Now that question has changed everything. There's something, if you want to feel good, if you want to be okay, this question. So by asking this question, how can I be helpful? And doing things that are helpful, I actually felt helpful. I felt like I had something to offer the world. And so that was my journey. It would be one in which I started asking that question. My first job was delivering auto parts at an auto parts store, and thought, well, I'd like to be helpful. I want to make sure they get the right parts, make sure things go where they're supposed to, be a good employee. And by doing that, eventually I started feeling good about who I am. I would be of service to recovery people, and then I became an auto parts person, which was like a big deal, because back then it wasn't computers; it was a bunch of books, and I had stacks of books, and you had to know things about cars and technical stuff. And eventually, I'd become the manager of the auto parts store, and I was like, "What?" Like the manager, like they gave me the combination of safe. And I remember I called my brother, I'm like, they gave me the combination of safe, and said, they don't know who I am. And my brother said to me, they know who you are today, and that was just, wow. And then, so by asking this question, my whole journey in life would change. I went from, auto parts, I actually became an auto mechanic. I want to be helpful, sure people's cars are safe, make sure they have honest repairs. A friend of mine thought I'd be good working with adolescents in treatment, and man, I'll tell you what, if I don't know how anyone would think that if you knew me back then, blue collar worker. Sense of fun was sending a blowtorch underneath the bathroom stall when somebody's on the toilet. Probably shouldn't let me around kids. And I'm going to tie that into a memory when I was a kid. My mom used to, do everything she could to have us be okay. And she got the younger kids, myself, my young brother, into Little League, and I got to play baseball and do that kind of thing. And we would have our team parties. And we'd go to a team party house, and they'd have a swimming pool, they'd have a big house, and but what I always remembered was they had blue toilet water, and I thought, whoa, like this is what rich people have, they have blue toilet water, like wow, their house was very different, and so I had this concept of how other people lived, right? And they had homes and pools and blue toilet water and family stuff. And so I'm now entering into recovery. I'm 22 years old. And I've already lost a family. I've already lost my kid. I've already been homeless. I've already been arrested. I know what jail is. I've done all these things. I'm only 22. So now I know I need to figure out how normal people live. And I would have a dialogue in my mind about what a normal person would do here. They would shake a hand right now. They would ask how you were doing. They would, I would mimic people's behaviors. I was very disassociated from my emotional experience. And, I had these concepts from my youth about what normal people live like. And I was just having them pretend. And, but the beauty of that was these people taught me how normal people live. They taught me things like, I remember getting a checking account. And, I was so excited, you go to a bank, you get a checking account. And then I could go to a meeting and raise my hand and say, man, I got a checking account today. And everybody'd clap and they'd tell you, yeah, you got a check. Now, I couldn't tell the fellas at work, I got a checking account, because they're like, what are you, some lame guy? And then I remember getting a check cashing card back in those days for a supermarket. If you want to write a check, you needed to have a card on file, and you fill the paperwork, show them your account. So I did that, and I got my check cashing card, and I'd go to the meeting and tell them, man, I got a check cashing card. And, everybody's like, well, you can go shopping, you can do this. All these little things they taught me about how to do. And I remember one day, I'm going to the grocery store. I got my check cashing card on file. I got my checking account, and I'm shopping. And you're not going to believe this, but they had blue toilet water right there, like on aisle 5, man. And I was like, what? Like, it wasn't even expensive. It was like 89 cents or something. So of course, I got 2, because you gotta have more. And I don't even know if I remember finishing my shopping because I was so excited about the blue toilet water that I went up, I got my 2, I wrote my check, they took my check, I got to go home. I put 2 of them in, my toilet water was blue, man. And and then I'm going to the meeting, like, I got blue toilet water, man. And I'm all excited, and they clap. But the big lesson in life that really struck me was that blue toilet water was not just for rich people. It wasn't expensive. It was always available. It was always right in front of my face, but I never saw it because I didn't know it was for me. I didn't know that the life I've always wanted, the person I wanted to be, was always available. I just didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I deserved it. I couldn't see something as simple as something that was on aisle 5 the whole time. And what it was teaching me is the limitations of my own mind, the limitations of what's available to me, that I couldn't even allow myself to see things that were available. And so in these meetings, they taught me how to do these basic things that opened up a world to me and allowed me to enter the human race. As a matter of fact, in the 12 steps, they have a 4th and 5th step, and that's where you do an inventory of the things that that you've don't feel good about, moral inventory, and things that you've struggled with and harm that you've done. And I'll tell you, that was probably the most cathartic sort of early experiences in my life. Was I shared with another human being the worst things I'd ever done in my life, and I said it out loud, and it allowed me to enter the human race, because he was like, well, I've done this and I've done that. And it turns out what I've discovered now, with over 41 years, is that everyone I meet has done things they don't feel good about, and we're all struggling to learn how to be okay. And the freedom that came from that. Now, it didn't happen right when I did it. I felt terrible and numb for like 2 weeks. But after that, I entered the human race. I realized we all have frailties, and we're all learning how to live. And what I've done is actually allowing me to learn what doesn't work. I have successfully found about 1 million ways to not be happy, successfully, which taught me how to become happy. These choices that I've made in my past are the fertilizer for the growth I have today. The lessons about what doesn't work has led me to find what does work. And everyone I meet in life, is trying to be okay. And our life lessons that we often feel bad about are nothing to feel bad about. As a matter of fact, you can improve your past by making good use of those lessons. My former tragedies are now the ground from which I'm able to help others. And so this journey of asking the big question, how can I be helpful, has been one that has guided the rest of my life since early recovery. And how I can be helpful has been in different modalities. Auto mechanic, adolescent counselor, adolescent high school teacher, Buddhist monk. And, today I have the opportunity to help in a wide range of ways. I get to work with people in recovery. I run a Buddhist center.
When did the pearl of wisdom enter your mind space in the 12-step program that you entered in your early 20s? that talked about not just becoming happy yourself, but how can you help others. How did that come in? Like, what part of the program brought that pearl forward?
Yeah, so that happened uniquely in a group that I belonged to. And in my first year, my first sponsors, he was actually an atheist, and he was one of the kindest people you'd meet. He was a used car salesman, and he had said, for him personally, an atheist, his 12 steps were just the most practical way of living he'd ever found. It helped him, and what he taught was when people come into, like for instance, buy a car, he never tried to sell them a car. He tried to be helpful. He said, what are your needs? What's good for you? Sometimes he'd send them down the road. Sometimes he'd let them know we don't have what you have, or this is a good thing. And guess what? Salesman of the month, like every month, And because people remembered, he's honest, he's helpful. But there was a book called A New Pair of Glasses. A guy named Chuck C. He was an old spiritual guru back in the day in AA. And he had this chapter for fun and for free. And he had been wildly successful in his career, and everything was crumbling once in his life, and everything was going down. And he was in his car, and he was going to, go to this meeting to save his business. And he stopped. He pulled over, and he said, it's the first time in his life he went to sell somebody something. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I've always just tried to be helpful. And so those two people in my life resonated in my first early years of recovery to the life lesson in that chapter of doing life for fun and for free. I made a decision to never work for a paycheck, that I would work to be helpful. And, whatever job, whether I was, putting tires on a car, or whether I was actually at one point I was the senior account manager of a management healthcare corporation, which kind of phenomenal for me is, but it was helping people, right? It was a mental health thing. And so my life has taken these different journeys, but that guidance has been one that has, guided me since early recovery, and it has helped me. And I think one of the things that has been a real gift in my life is I've had the opportunity to live directly and experience life at different socioeconomic levels. I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to be a single parent. I know what it's like to, blue collar guy. I also know what it's like to be a counselor or a school teacher or, a corporate person. I know what it's like to, be behind bars. And I know what it's like to present at a conference of psychiatrists, which that one's a little bit mind-blowing. I know it's like to live in a monastery in India. And so I've had these personal experiences in life, and I think that has been really the driving force that is what I'm here today to do. And what one of my teachers had told me is that, my journey here, because I've never been interested in teaching. I don't want to teach. I just want to go be a yogi and not talk to people. And yet my karma keeps bringing me back to teach. And I would fight it. And finally, one of my teachers, this great Lama, he just said, you're a Lotsattva. So a Lotsattva is a translator of the Dharma. And what I get from people is I'm able to connect Dharma to everyday life in a way that makes sense to them. And I think that's simply because I've lived it personally at all these struggles myself. All of those lessons and what doesn't work, I've successfully navigated how to mess things up so many ways in so many different forums.
Now I'm interested to know at what age and that transition into Buddhism and where that came in your process.
Yeah, one of the most transformative events in my life happened at the end of 1999. I just went through a divorce. So one of the things I didn't tell you is I did get to find my daughter, and that's an important part of the story. So I
Woohoo!
lost her. Yeah, when she was 10. Yeah, she was 10 months old last time I saw her, and they took her away on that night. And in recovery, about 2 years in recovery, I'm like, I want to find my daughter. I want to, see her, and I'm a good human being now. And an old timer told me, that's not how it works. Just because you get better doesn't mean you get your daughter back. Doesn't work like that. But he told me the most, another valuable lesson. He said, if she's ever put back in your life, you can be a father worth finding. That you have power over. You have no power over everything else. And so that was a mission for me to stay being, a person that's a good person and a father worth finding. It's the least I could do if she's ever put back in my life.
That's so beautiful.
And, it was important. It was so valuable. It got me through the next bunch of years. And I did. I got that call one day about, are you the father of this little girl? And as a social worker who had found me, her mom had never actually gotten clean to that point. And, she was taken from the home due to, the environment. And I got to meet my little girl. She's 8.5 years old, man. And I'm like, I remember my heart beating, man. I'm going up to the door. I'm terrified, but I'm also excited. And I don't know what, she's never seen me. What's she gonna, is she gonna want to hug, not hug? By now I've been a counselor. I've had friends who are therapists. I had all the training to meet an 8-year-old little girl, but I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And remember the last time the door opened, her grandmother was holding her, and she was this little baby. And that's the last time I saw her. This time the door opened. And there's this beautiful little girl in her best dress ready to meet her dad. And she immediately hugged me and wouldn't let go. And I melted. It was the best day of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. Best day of my life. And I got that opportunity to be a dad again. And I would raise her from that point. And she had a younger sister who would be my other daughter, who would, choose to adopt me as her dad. And so I got 2 for the price of 1, and a twofer. And yeah.
Oh, John, this is incredible, man. This is wow,
amazing.
What a blessing from your hard work, from your good work to have this come back to you in this way.
Yeah, it's beyond belief. And today kids, grandkids never see me loaded. It's been a real gift. Wow. And then so I'm with my daughter. She's high school. We're going through. I got married, and then anyway, going through a divorce. Some things happened that unsettled my whole world. Things that I discovered that really threw me into a loop. And depression. And I'm taking care, I'm a single dad now. And I'm about 15 years in recovery. So 22, 37. And I decided that I needed to have a relationship with myself. I needed to understand what it's like to not be in a relationship with a partner, to be a good dad, just focus on that, and to go inward and have that relationship with myself that I've never had. There's always been people in my life in one way or another, and so I made a commitment for the year of 2000, basically, to be celibate, to learn to meditate, to have this relationship with myself, and to learn how to be okay with me, to not need someone or something to make me okay. And so that was the big transformation. I learned meditation. I remembered 10 minutes a day felt like an hour. And, mind was all over the place. I was wrapping up my teaching credential, so I focused on school, being a dad, and meditating and, understanding, I was going to different meditation centers and Buddhist centers. And my whole focus was to learn what it was like to be John, to be okay in this skin, in this vessel. And it was the most transformative year of my life. The first 3 months were brutal. Celibacy was really hard. I mean, no self-touching, none of that. I mean, I needed to be pure and whole and overcome all these impulses and desires that had driven me my whole life. And an amazing thing happened about 6 months in was I started to see humans as human beings, intimate relationships with human beings, not whether this person was funny or that person's a jerk or this woman's attractive and this one's not. All that started to fade away. And I started to be able to have intimate relationships with human beings. And by intimate, I mean vulnerable and authentic. And it was just the best thing ever. By the end of that year, not only was I okay with me, I was okay with others. I was able to walk in this body and be a part of in a way I'd never been before. And that transformation of that year to the year 2000 did expose me to Buddhism. It did expose me to different spiritual traditions. Mostly, it exposed me to the transient nature of impulses and conditioning and habits that I no longer was a prisoner of in the way that I used to be. And so my daughter, it's funny, at the start of that year, we had our hopes and desires. Well, she was able to go off to college. I was able to go teach school at North Long Beach, Compton, where I thought I would be of most use. And I moved down there, and there was a Buddhist center a couple blocks from the house, and I would meet my teacher and an old Tibetan Lama. It's just, amazing being. And that would be the impetus to adopting some of these teachings into my life, and being of service to my kids. I got to teach for a bunch of years at Jordan High School, and the last 3 years in Buddhist robes, kicking with the homies in Buddhist robes. Funny. And when you try to break up a fight in Buddhist robes, it's pretty funny. I'm standing in front of them, and this big Samoan kid would pick me up and say, "Mr. Bruna, I don't want to hurt you. Let me put you over there." And then I'd jump back in, "No, Mr. Bruna." And so it'd be great. It was, some really great years. I got to, I'm still in contact with some of those students. And so, but during that time, something happened. And here's an interesting piece of the story is, I remember going to a teaching by the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's Pasadena Civic Auditorium, and I went to the teaching. I'm in the 4th row. I'm a school teacher, getting interested, learning about Buddhism. And for 3 days, he's brainwashing me, I'm in the 4th row, and I'm behind the translator, Tubden Jinpa. So he's looking at him a lot, and he's looking at me, or I feel like he's looking at me. And I'm just, just amazed. And it's way over my head. I don't understand anything. And so, but I saw the monks and the nuns on the stage. And by then, a lot has changed in my life. I'm okay in my own skin. I've been a meditator. I've attended teachings. My daughter's off in college. What about being a monk, kind of. So one of my friends who's a nun said, well, if you're thinking like that, you need to ask your teacher. Now, I'm not going to sit here and think, well, I'm going to ask him to be a monk. That didn't make much sense to me. I'm aware that Westerners get very excited about things, and then reality kicks in. So I was smart, because I'm a calculator, and I'm like, I'm going to meet with him and I'm going to say, if I'm thinking about being a monk, you know, in about 3 years, you know, when my teaching commitments are done, you know, what advice would you give? That way, he would either tell me, don't waste your time, you're not monk material, or he might say some inspiring words, right? And so I went to go meet with him, and, you know, I prostrate and I sit down, and he says, so you're thinking about being a monk? And I go, yeah. And he goes, good, you're ready. I'll take you to India, you know, next year, and you'll get ordained. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know, I got this 3-year thing, you know, and all that. And he just laughed at me. And then he looked at me and he told me why I was ready to be a monk.
Ah.
He could see my mind. He told me about myself. I mean, I felt naked before him. Here's a human, he's just telling me everything about myself. He's telling me about my qualities and was ready. And then he told me, and here's that area that you need to work on. And I'm like, what? You know, like he could see this, and blew my mind. So I went to India, you know, and I got ordained. I joined the monastery. I came back, and the first thing they asked was, as a new monk, would I be one of the coordinators to host His Holiness the Dalai Lama when he visits? So the long and short of it is, in 2004, I'm sitting in the 4th row at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium listening to a teaching. 2006, I'm running that event, and I'm greeting His Holiness as a monk, and in the same venue, Pasadena Civic Auditorium. And I often tell people, be careful when you go see His Holiness, you might get a haircut, you know, that all this karma ripened in so fast. And so these opportunities manifested for me. So yeah, my teacher told me, yeah, 3 years, you come back, you'll be a monk, you'll finish your high school thing, it'll all work out. It all did. Mm-hmm. And so this journey of monastic life began. While I still finished teaching high school, I still served the monastery in Long Beach, California. That's where I lived. And then I would transition and work directly for the monastery for a number of years, traveling with monks around the United States.
Wow. Now, a question that seekers often have is, how do you know which path to follow in terms of, even in Buddhism itself, there's many different paths, let alone the other paths up the mountain. So what could you share about that? How did you know this was the right path for you?
And, you know, there is that transition from the spiritual supermarket to, at some point, you find your path, right? And that's important, to not adopt, you know, that this is the way or this is the only way, or Dharma's found in all these traditions, Dharma and truth and methods to meet people where they're at. And to be something you're not, it's not going to be very helpful. And so that's where there's a quest, right, that we undertake. And it's nice to explore, right? It's nice to explore. When I moved to Long Beach, you know, I was thinking Buddhism seemed to make the most sense. So I was checking out different Buddhist centers. But, you know, where some people get stuck is we just take what we like from different traditions and we kind of modge podge things. And, but wherever our journey is, you know, there's a path, and you don't get anywhere on a path unless you engage with the path, right? And if I just keep taking what I like, well, I'm never getting anywhere because I'm just seeing my own mind, and, you know. And so everyone from their side, I think it's good to explore. It's good to test. There's some teachers I had early on in my spiritual journey before Buddhism that got me somewhere, but they're not teachers I would have today, you know. But it doesn't mean they were bad teachers. It just meant they got me to a point, right? And it was helpful. And, you know, and then another teaching. So I explored my spiritual traditions eventually, which would lead me to Buddhism. And then at some point, there needs to be, I think, for everyone to say, well, this heart-open connection is one thing. But for me, and what we teach in our lineage is, if you're going to follow something, check your teacher. Check your teacher. Check the students. Do they have what you want? And so there's a lot of teachers who are very charismatic who, as we know, didn't turn out so healthy ethically, and a lot of behaviors that have been unhelpful and harmful. But you check, and you start to see, like, my advice is to check the students. One of my teachers says, check the students, right? Mm-hmm. What are they like? Check the teacher. Does he treat everyone the same? The people who offer are great benefactors, the person who has no money. And so for me, what I give advice when somebody's looking for a teacher or a path, it's usually through a teacher, is you can generally tell, are they there to help you, or are they there so you can help them be a teacher? Mm-hmm. That's usually not that complicated to figure out. And see how they treat others, and see what the community is like for you. And so to find, don't force yourself. Dalai Lama will even tell people, don't be a Buddhist, be a better whatever it is you are. And if it does ripen, and you meet, the way I find it, I tell people to find good teachers, be a good student. Mm-hmm. All right? Apply the teachings, be ethical. Every foundation of every authentic spiritual tradition, the ground of all is virtue, ethical behavior, morality. And that's where you start. And you start working on being not perfect, but a better human being. Try to be honest, try to be authentic, try to not harm. And as we become more virtuous, we're creating the ripened karma to meet with those teachers and those teachings that suit us. And that's where I think, we can get pushed beyond our comfort zones. Because, and here's something that's really key to me, is blind faith will get you nowhere. Blind faith will get you nowhere. Reading an inspiring book, talking philosophically about, the nature of primordial wisdom and existence, does not transform your life or your mind. Faith built upon experience gets you somewhere. And that means I need to put the lessons into my life and show up for them and see if it works. I need to test it. And so we adopt a spiritual path, whatever that one is for you. As one does that, you start getting results or not getting results. And once you start getting the results, your faith is now built upon experience, which will lead to the faith that will have you move beyond your limitation. And that becomes a ground that you can lean into. When you have a faith that's a blind faith, it's willy-nilly. It's when things get tough, well, I'm going to try out this other thing. But when your faith is grounded in direct experience, from applying the teachings in your life and having the result, then that faith is rooted deeply and it will weather any storm. And you're on your path. And so for me, these are the things that make a real difference.
As we begin to come to the close of this interview, I wanted you to share, John, a little bit more specifically about the programs that you're chairing in Carbondale at the Way of Compassion. And if you could tell me the essence of what you're offering.
Can we take the essence of these ancient wisdoms and bring them into the world in a universal way that human beings can benefit? And so my book, The Wisdom of Meaningful Life, is my attempt at taking the core of dharma that could be utilized by a Christian, by an atheist, by a spiritualist, by people of whatever tradition. It's a presentation ultimately of the three main parts of the Eightfold Path: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. They call it the three higher trainings. And the four immeasurable attitudes: equanimity, loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy. So these are the basis of almost everything that we have to offer. And so in the Mindful Life program, which by the way now is the Tri-Wisdom Institute, so we just became a nonprofit. We've just transitioned everything so we can have a bigger outreach to people and make it more accessible. So Tri-Wisdom Institute, the foundation of all of our mindfulness trainings and courses, has a litmus test of three things. Everything we teach has to be universal, means whatever your spiritual background, identity, whatever you identify with, these teachings are accessible to you. You don't adopt our spiritual principle, our view. So it has to be universal. It has to be accessible. You have to be able to get it in your own way of understanding. It has to be practical. That's the third one, practical. Something I can do in my life right now. So all of the teachings, Tri-Wisdom Institute, are universal for all people, are accessible. We make all of our, they're financially accessible. We have everything sliding scale. We have scholarships. Everything's available. We're a nonprofit now. And then practical, things that you can do and put into your life today. And then at the Buddhist Center, the Way of Compassion, we have a, traditional Tibetan Rimé lineage, means open to all traditions. And so we always try to present things to meet people where they're at.
Is there anything else that you want to leave us with? Any words of wisdom? Anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to share with our listener?
I think just one of the most important things that I think people need to be aware of in the world we are living in is a lack of free will. And what I mean by that is our attention spans are just being hijacked. We have smartphones that we live with, and we need them to access things and buy tickets and do banking and all those. But what's happening, and there's a great book called Dopamine Nation that's showing what it's hijacking in terms of our attention and our well-being. And now there's a recent article out about the post-literacy world we're living in, where people aren't reading books anymore. They don't have the attention span to read a book. That the most important medicine that we can have today in this digital age and this dopamine, world that we're living in, where you can be distracted at a push of a button, is meditation. So cultivating your attention, seeing that as the nutrients of the life that gives you an opportunity to be a participant in your own life, no matter what your tradition is, no matter what your journey is. A foundational medicine for the affliction of this multitasking digital age that we're living in, to make sure that everyone do your best to have a daily meditation practice, I think is critical to having any capacity to be well in this world and to have some free will. And so right now I'm just urgently on that piece. I have this 28-day meditation course that every session starts with, why am I meditating? Because I don't want to be a prisoner of every thought, worry, fear, or impulse that arises. I want to be able to have a choice about who I become. I'm here to tame the mind, to make it my friend, rather than something dragging me around from one fear and worry to another. That's why I'm meditating, like being very clear about the medicine you're taking and what it's addressing, and to bring it to mind every time. I just think it's critical for, you talk about health food. That's the nutrients, man, to take care of this heart and mind.
Wow, it's so beautiful, John. Thank you so much for joining me on Connection is the Medicine. It's been a real blessing to speak with you, and I look forward to learning more about all that you're doing, and thank you for your service in the world.
Thank you for your service and all the healing you bring to the world. It's always such a joy, and I appreciate the gift of your love and kindness. It just flows everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for joining me on Connection is the Medicine. This podcast is sponsored by the Connection is the Medicine Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to co-creating connection to self, community, nature, and spirit. I hope this conversation inspires you to connect with deeper meaning and purpose in your life. To learn more about our offerings at True Nature in Carbondale, Colorado, and Loma Sagrada in Nosara, Costa Rica, please visit connectionisthemedicine.com. Blessings on your day, and I look forward to visiting with you again soon.